Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Harachak Wadash. Double honor speaking to the apostles and elders at GreatMillstone who were well and have taught us this 100% truth. Much peace and blessings be unto you, hopeful, your life out there pushing out this word of God, truth and sincerity. To all you Akim, I do say Shalom. I am the Yeshua coming in with a quick video I do entitled, Is Satan Evil? Is Satan evil? Hell nah. And the thing is, the scriptures prove that, but the thing about these so-called modern day Christians is that they're wacky tacky because they don't really read the book that they, proclaim. They rep it, right, represent, but they don't really comply. They don't abide by such testimony, such, facts we profess. Give me a second. Right. They do not profess what they teach. They only claim. And as the Apostle James have stated in the book of James, the first chapter, which you will pull out, to them it is nothing but a vain religion. So this is the book of James, chapter 1, verse 26. If any man among you seem to be religious, right, for those Hebrew Instagram lights, if you will, or just social media ways that talk about, religion ain't mentioned in the Bible. Well, it is. I mean, it's right there, the KJV, the very book that you guys emphasize. It is find it right there. Now, obviously, this is mirrored, so you really can't see it, but it states religion, and this is James, the first chapter, verse 26. Continuing on, it doth read, If any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue. And what does it mean to be religious? Well, as the other Apostle bar hath broken down, it does pertain to servitude, right? Servitude of what? Servitude to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Else, why would, the apostles of old refer to themselves as servants? Slaves. I'm gonna pull that precept out right quick, or one of the many. Okay, one I will pull out is the Apostle Paul, not one of the 12, but an apostle. Because he was him, bro. He's him, right? He's on a whole new level. Which many men of the Lord have speculated how the current reincarnation of the Apostle Paul is the other Apostle Tahar. When I first heard it, I believed it. And even reading the scriptures, there is some resonance. So I believe through faith that has the same individual. And it's no wonder as to why the other Apostle Tahar is on a whole different level. The Lord's dealing with them, starting off with the other Apostle Tahar, right? And then the men on down. Like, he meditates and he comes up, with these, new facts. Like, I learned how, what's it called? I think it was as a second-hand witness through, the words of the other Apostle Bar, how he had spoken of how the other Apostle Tahar in meditation had realized that Mount Sinai was not mere so a mountain, more so a chariot. And then they use second Ezra's, the chapter where Ezra has a vision of the mountain without, origin. It just covers up the face of the sky pertaining to the chariot. And that's how, we run out, and that's really a chariot. Right? So, I believe that, that's the Apostle Paul. But I digress. Okay, just bear with me. in the New Testament. All right. Moving away from the Gospels. God damn it. I'm trying to go into the epistles of the men of the Lord. All right, here's an example. Titus 1:1. Paul, a servant of Yahweh and an apostle of Yahweh Shalom Mashiach, according to the faith of Yahweh's election and the acknowledging of the truth, which is after godliness. Right? Now, the other apostles of the heart have done broken down how servant, bondmaid, or bondmaid, servant, slave, they're all interchangeable. Right? And that's why when you read a newer translation, it doesn't say servant, it says slave. Slave, because you're bound to the Lord. Here. James 1:1. A servant of Yahweh and of the Lord Yahweh Shem Mashiach to the 12 tribes scattered abroad to greeting. Now, chronologically speaking, this epistle of James was the first written out of, the entirety of the New Testament. Right, the Old Testament, obviously, that's going to be more ancient because, what's it called, even, the apostles, disciples in the New Testament were, going by the OT, right? But the book of James is the first epistle written, in the entire collection of the New Testament. And in the first verse, in the first chapter, states, to the 12 tribes, greetings. So what does that then say? It states how, the 10, so-called lost tribes, Northern Kingdom, they're not done away with. They're still here. Right, that's in the book of 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter. And hell, look, I am literally the manifestation of such, people. I am evidence, living proof. Okay, so 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter, verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea, aka Hosea, the king, whom Salmanasar, aka Shalmaneser, I believe was the 5th, the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. Right? But they took, because, one thing about our people, or one thing I would emphasize, is that, we were to go off, the Lord would, kick us out the land. That's exactly what freaking happened. Second Kings, the 17th chapter ties into that, whole exile. And what happened then? You had implants come into place. They took over our land, our spots. And it's the same way to this day. You got Amalek right there, what's called the least of the flock. They out there was called, pretending to be the real Jews. Really, you're so-called, right? So-called meaning that's what you call yourself. It's not true. Right? What's it called? And you also have that suffix, the ish, 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 after Jewish. It's just a suffix meaning closely related to denoting, similarities. And what does that entail? Jacob and Esau, they were brothers, right? They were both children of Isaac and Rebecca, right? But really, the true Jews of the nation, or really the Judites, that's where it comes from. But, Yahweh Shai, in one circumstance, did really allude to the whole nation of Israel, right? When he was getting on that, the implant, right? From Samaria, if I'm not mistaken. And he stated how, salvation is for the Jews. Really, he meant the whole nation. And he did mean the whole nation, because when we understand the context of the Gospels, he realized he was also speaking on behalf of the Northern Kingdom. He made the mention how I have another flock, far away, referring to that in the Americas, which in the scriptures, is known as Arsabrath, meaning another land. I digress. But they took this counsel among themselves that they would not, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen, and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. Now, what does it mean by where mankind never dwelt? Well, we know that the Eastern Hemisphere, comprising of Africa, Asia, and Europe, which, yes, even in the scriptures, Europe is a part of Asia, thenceforth is referred to as Asia, though now what's it called political boundaries. It's its own so-called continent, and that's where you have the greater term Eurasia, and that's the dog. Bear with me. Lesson. Let's call it Slovakia. Alright, so that's where you get that so-called term, Eurasia. What was it called? We know when we read, I believe it was the name of the 7th chapter, correct me if I'm wrong, it does entail, what's it called, Europe as Asia. And, you know, but the distinction, you know, it's been around for a while. I mean, you go as far back as to the histories of Herodotus, the so-called father of history, you know, Greek. And he had made the mention how, you know, there was beef between the Greeks and the Asiatics, you know, Greeks from, you know, Greece. And, you know, he doesn't tell how the, I think it was the Phoenicians, if I'm not mistaken. No, the Persians have spoken how the Phoenicians came from the Erythraean Sea, and they came up, you know, to the Great Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and, you know, they did steal Io, right, princess of Argon, or Argos, you know, a capital city in, you know, Greece at the time, and, you know, that basically, you know, kicked off multiple battles between each other. But then again, obviously, as, you know, Esau's history scholars, you know, they do debate each other, and what's it called, understanding the, what's it called, a lot of mythologies that arisen in early civilizations, right? It's more of a contested area, and you can believe it if you want or not, because again, there's multiple accounts, right? Which, you know, contradict each other. But that's for another topic, right? I don't want to delve into, you know, that type of history. But you see how, what's it called, for like over millennia, you know, you've had that, what's it called, distinction between, you know, so-called Europeans and, you know, Asiatics, though they're all Asians. But as the other apostles, you know, and the GreatMillstone down have spoken of, that whole area was a known earth at the time. It's been inhabited. Therefore, what does it mean by, what's it called, whenever mankind dwelt into a further country? Well, listen, take heed. that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land, and they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passage of the river. Right, what's it called? That they may keep the law because they never kept it in the land when they were supposed to. That's why they got kicked out. You know, now they're given like a second chance. Oh, you can keep it over here. You know. That actually reminds me of, there's the book. Pull it out from the bookshelf. So there's this book edited by Tony Hillerman, The Best of the West, an anthology of classic writing from the American West. My mother got me this book. She contrived a, you know, group of books from, I think it was, you know, one of those yard sales, but we got it for free because, you know, the dude did appreciate the fact that people still read, you know, which is, it's becoming a lost art. I mean, people are using AI to summarize, you know, long content instead of actually taking their time and reading it, which we are, it's a lucky. We are to read, right? Read this whole book, which we have from the back. Read this extension, which is a part of the book, but has been taken out for a better backdrop. Esau took it out, right? Because you know, basically spoke of the truth. You know, truth. It clarified who is Esau Edom. Yes, I have the book. What's it called? But you know, for a backdrop, Martin Luther, an Edomite, you know, which he had some good points, right? Especially with the whole Reformation when he was, you know, getting down the, you know, Catholic Church, which was, you know, overly wicked at the time with the indulgences, and they're still wicked because, you know, they don't go by true doctrine. You know, now you have what's it called, the previous pope that passed away, you know, allowing what's it called, so-called same-sex marriage, right? Which is, you know, obviously we know it's wickedness, right? Because it goes against the true, the true ordinance, the true nature, right? The law, biblical law, which is the law supposed to be, you know, by ultimatum the law of the land. You know, henceforth, why in Isaiah the 2nd chapter does make the mention how, you know, the heathen shall keep the law, our law. It's ours right now, but in the kingdom when we're in power, you know, they're gonna have to keep it, obviously. What was it called? What's the It is wickedness, you know, to man with each other, and then you know, niggas out here, what's it called? Inflating David and Jonathan, talking about how oh yeah, they were gay, you know, they loved each other more than mofo. That's not what it means. It's not literally meaning what's it called, that they were, you know, what's it called, a couple. No, right? What's it called? David, you know, and Jonathan were straight. You know, they liked women. They both had, you know, children and wives. What's it called? But that's, you know, a brotherly love. You know, to love each other, you know, more than women. And, you know, you feel that right now. That's an effectual thing. Look at the men of the Lord. Those prophets, they love each other more, right? And more so not because, you know, a hoe will be a hoe. You know, she may leave. You know, what's it called? Countless, you know, women, the men of the Lord, have left, you know, those men because they think them to be, what's it called, this truth to be something crazy and conspiratorial and whatnot. Really, there's nothing conspiratorial about it. More so, that's just what's it called, speaking on future events. Really, the only conspiratorial person here, what's it called, is Esau Edom. You know, and even the woman who, what's it called, in, you know, Western marriages, you know, they do get married, you know, and they what's it called, they encourage no prenup signature, as to take half of everything, half of the assets, and leave the man with practically nothing. And that's not an oversimplification. More so, it is true, and it has happened. We see it. You know, what's it called? That serves also as an example as to why we don't try and get with women. You know, not only does the apostles, what's it called, you know, of old, and the men of the Lord, you know, by just the, what's it called, refrain, you know, but also these, you know, examples, which we're as like second-hand witnesses to, you know, they do aid in, you know, just backing away. You know, I would never want to get with a woman on this side, man. Wait for the kingdom when they're perfected in order. Right. Right. Where's the litter? God damn it. Alright. Look, share with me. Okay. Leviticus, the 20th chapter, verse 13, and it doth read, if a man also lie with mankind, as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. Right? So that's not, you know, beautiful. That's disgusting. Right? It's an abomination. Abomination means disgusting. The Lord detests it. You know, you call me a freaking bigot, I really don't give a damn. You know, I'm a bigot because what's it called? I abide by the Lord. Right? I really don't care about the titles. Because what's it called? All I care about is being on the side of the Lord. You know? What's it called? And that's the thing, you know, that's the mockery, you know, ridicule men of the Lord have to often face, right? You know, it's been that way since the start, man. Right? What's it called? They counted, you know, Noah, you know, as a fool. What's it called? Hey, that reminds me of, you know, Solomon, the Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter, right? Was it not? Yeah, but really, was he a fool? No. For though the preaching of the cross is, you know, an example folly. The Lord likes that. That's why he ordained it to be so, to be done. Right? But really, are they fools? No. Really, a fool is like the opposite of wise. And the men of the Lord are wise, right? They're founded in wisdom. Right, look. Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter. Verse 4, we fools accounted as life man is. Oh, what's it called? Nah, I was wrong with that part. I was thinking I was going to say that that the wicked were referring to the men of the Lord as fools. Though that is the case, but really in this verse, the wicked are referring to themselves as the fools. But I mean, the principle still stands because they do account the men of the Lord, as life to be madness and his entity without honor. Right? That's why what's it called? When men of the Lord die with grace, basically, with mercy, like in their sleep, people round about him, they're like, oh, this guy got put to death, what's it called, it's going off, it's judgment. There ain't no goddamn judgment, man, mofo, what's it called, that's mercy, that's grace, because you have to realize the things that are coming, the things that have been at hand, they're perilous, Yeah, sure, I boast and talk about, well, I don't boast, but I talk about confidently speaking, like, oh yeah, I could do this, I could do this, but really, if you let it sink down, it's going to be pretty scary. That's why we're supposed to hold on, right? Hey, buckle up, right? Like Jackie Wells from Cyberpunk 2077 talking about buckle up, right? Sulakia, excuse me, Sulakia. Sincerely. How is he numbered among the children of power, and his lot is among the saints? And they're the true saints. The saints is the nation of Israel, but it starts out with the elect because what? They've been sanctified first and foremost, right? Saint means sanctified, right? I digress, however. Time back to what's it called? James, the 1st chapter. If a man among you seem to be religious and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is vain. This man's religion is vain. And that's the majority of the people. That's the masses of the people. Modern day Christians, are vain religious, right? That's just the title. So, it's pretty funny and ironic how they get butthurt when you refer to them as a Christian. When they time I'm Catholic. Well, mofo, Catholicism is a denomination within Christianity. But they get butthurt and they advocate to be, properly associated with the proper title. But the thing is, you don't deserve such a title because you're a fool, right? You don't keep the law. And what's it called? Also, the scriptures go into how they praise me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Exactly. Pure religion and defiled before power and the Father is just to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction and to keep himself inspired from the world. I remember the old Apostle Gabar broke it down, which obviously Tahar has spoken on it, but I was referring to the video I saw with the Apostle Gabar on the daily exhortation. I think it was the 3 channel. Now it's daily exhortation 4 if I'm mistaken. But, back when it was, under the number 3. He made the mention how it really means to, teach, right? To visit the fatherless means, Jake without the Lord. And because you come into this thing, you come into the adoption of sons, right? The Lord is our Father, right? He's our dad. So like, I'm still recovering from my sickness. I've gotten way better, but the phlegm, and mucus shite still is a contestant. I still contend with it, only so slightly. I could speak better. My throat doesn't hurt, which is good. But I digress. It reads, "And wills in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world." Hey, Yahushua was unspotted, right? He had no spots, right? Because he was sinless. We're just trying to be like Yahushua. Now, obviously, don't be over righteous, not over wicked for lead to destruction, but keeping a balance, right? Just keep on rehearsing the righteous acts to the best of your ability. Hey, because, regardless, our righteousness are as filthy rags. But, dang, I really digress, huh? And I just remembered, the whole topic of this lesson was to get into, is Satan evil? Hell nah. I was supposed to get out the book of Job, but I'm over here talking about what's it called, true religion versus vain religion. But it's all, all through the spirit. But yeah, this is the book of James, the first chapter. Oh, so like second Ezra is the 10th chapter, of course. Right. Before I make the jump to, I want to bring out the 13th chapter again, and to emphasize the nation of Israel as the 10 tribes will exist. Jeez, man, I'm jumping all over the place. Salakia. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passage of the river for the Most High, then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. For the country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Azareth. Now what's it called? That's referring to the Atlantic Ocean. And, with, the ancient, what's it called, seafaring tactics, right, and technology of old, it would take, about a year and a half. Though the Mormons in 2019, I believe it was, did conduct a physical experiment where they constructed a Phoenician-like ship. Phoenicians were seafarers back in the day, and from one point in Africa, right, they sailed all the way to like South America. I think it wasn't. It took them like some weeks, around the same time from it took Columbus to reach here, right, the Americas, right. But with ancient tactics, it took about a year. There unto the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come, the highest shall stay the springs of the stream again, that they may go through their first hostile the multitude with peace. Yeah, because what's it called? They're waking up into this thing. And the reason as to why I even pulled out this book in the first place was to comply with the precept, because before I digressed, Salakia, but what's it called? Because there is physical evidence of, the Israelites in North America. I mean, you go to JSOR database, an academic database, and obviously what's it called? Through the spirit, you're supposed to discern, separating the bones from the meat, right? Which is to separate the truth from the lies, because he's a goddamn deceiver and a liar, right? But we know within Esau's academic world, they do state how what's it called? Scholars do find findings, and they may believe some and they may disagree with some, right? Like my history professor, he always emphasizes what's it called? You could disagree if you like, right? Because again, it's debated territory, if you will. But JSOR database, I believe it was, and you could just go on a Google search engine. It doesn't freaking matter. You can find sources on scholars from the colonial era. You have this Edomite, this Terror, right, so-called Native American, but really he's a Terror, if I'm mistaken, and because his mother's a Gadite, but really I believe his father's an Edomite. But scholars like that have speculated how the so-called Indians of the Americas are the Northern Kingdom, and that's true. I mean, what's it called? I remember from one of the other apostles, they were doing a lesson and they were mentioning the beloved elder Abba Bivens, who's now in the spirit realm, right? What's it called? They made the mention how around the time he came into this truth, or Shalaki, what's it called? Began the truth. When the truth was about to come out, he had the dream. He had a dream, or what's it called? He was shown that the blacks, and the Indians in America were the Israelites. And obviously, it took some time for the distinctions to be clarified on what group, what so-called ethnic group belongs to what tribe. All right, and I believe I'm a Gadite. Growing up as Issachar, but then again, you look at the history of Mexico. It's a melting pot like America, but America is the great melting pot. Right? But Mexico was also like a melting pot because, going back to like 18th and 20th century, you did have a ton of migrations with the heathen nations and Jake as well. What's it called? That's why you got a lot of Levi, up north, right? Well, you also have a lot of Gad up north, like in Chihuahua, because before, political boundaries, existed, they were just, scattered abroad, blended between the spectrum, if you will. What I believe was a common Gadite, you know, but my people come from southern Mexico, right? But then again, you look at the migrations, they may have, you know, gone down. Like when I first came into this thing, I've speculated, what if I'm a Gadite? And there are other instances in science which I believe through faith, you know, the Lord taught me I'm a Gadite, and so therefore I believe through faith I'm a Gadite. You know, but we shall see for sure. You know, and if it be so, well, as the scriptures state, the spirit beareth witness with our spirit, right? That we're the children of the Most High. I believe I'm an Israelite. I believe I'm a Gadite. But I keep digressing. Those chapter 1, here was the evidence of, you know, Jake being in the land. You can't read it as mirrored. So it says New Mexico's mystery stone, and it pertains to the Decalogue. Decalogue meaning 10 Commandments stone. And yes, men of the Lord have, what's it called, done lessons on it. I believe it was the other Chazaki Allah who, you know, has physically gone and done a video on it. And also that's in Mexico. And it is on the drawing of the inscription. Yeah, the Hebrew, the Paleo Hebrew. Lashon Kodash. And look, the name of the Lord. Yeah. That second word, you know, right there, that's Yahweh. So, that's an example, that's evidence, you know, and there are other, what's it called, you know, examinations done to prove that we are in the Northern Kingdom, you know, so, you know, as a mainstream understanding notion is, we've been, you know, martyred, we've been done away, you know, we don't exist anymore, you know, that's not true, because how do I not exist, but I exist? That's not a paradox, son. It's simply what's it called, an observation. I've always been. I've never been done away with. You know, you may lose me through time, but I'm always here, right? And Esau knows that, you know, he's just a goddamn liar talking about, oh yeah, they disappeared, and we didn't disappear for crap, dog. Like, I'm still here, bro. And there's no wonder as to why, what's it called, you look at films and the culture and whatnot, what's it called, Northern Kingdom and Southern Kingdom are basically the same. There's no wonder as to why Judah and Issachar, what's it called, call themselves brothers. You know, they what's it called, share each other's customs and whatnot. Right? They got Judah, what's it called, dancing Issachar music, and some even wishing he was Issachar. Well, you could be Issachar after the spirit. You know, we don't know for sure though. Vice versa, right? I digress though. Going back to the main lesson. Starting off, is Satan evil? Hell no, right? He is righteous, and this is proven in the book of Job, the first chapter, verse 6 in the free child. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. Now, you know, starting off with the apostles know this at GreatMillstone, you know, there are 3 classifications of man, that be the sons of God, you know, the sons of the wicked, and the sons of man. We know the sons of God pertains to what, you know, we are now, the Israelites, right? But really, in this case, it's not referring to the Israelites, more so the sons of God are referring to the angels, the angelic beings, which, you know, as I can have done lessons on, videos on, those are our brothers. Those are also Israelites, you know, but, you know, they're with different glory, you know, they're spiritual beings, you know. See, the thing about the distinction with us and them is that they're already perfected, you know, they're already spiritual beings, you know, whereas us, you know, we're the human race, you know, and, you know, prophecy does say that we shall be true gods, you know, part of the Elohim as they are. What's it called? But, you know, the distinction lies, what's it called? We're so-called humans, you know, and we'll be able to reproduce. The angels, on the other hand, don't reproduce. How I even spoke about how, you know, in the resurrection, you're not given into marriage like the angels are, referring to the spirit realm. You're not popping out there. You're not popping chicks up there, bro. You know, leave that to the earth. You know. So though we be brothers and we're both Israelites, really it's us, our subset. we're different. And that's the confusing thing, that's a stumbling block on the many. And it's supposed to be confusing because, again, the mysteries are given to, are given to understand to the people of the Lord. It is no hard matter for us, but unto, the people whom the Lord ain't dealing with, it is a hard matter. Like, what does this mean? They out here, overthinking, and they bug out, acting all philosophical. And like, well, it's not that deep, you're just not giving the spirit, that's why it's a thing of, the men of the Lord emphasize prayer when it comes to, trying to, understand these deep things, right? These hard meats, if you will. But, I digress. Now, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves, the angels, before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. Satan was also, a part of that lot. That whole doctrine with so-called devil Lucifer, Satan being his own being who fell from grace and his locked in the so-called underworld, and he can't move up or whatever. Well, how is it that he ended up going to heaven? And then you got that retarded ass cartoon, where they dress him up as an angel with like a little veil, like he's hiding, like he goes to heaven. No one sees me, I'm the devil. Like, motherfucker. That's not how it works, bro. That's not how it was. We're giving it to you straight, bro. Dude's an angel, a righteous angel, but on the left-hand side. All right, what's it called? I'm gonna pull out a quick precept. Isaiah the 64th chapter, verse 6. I think that show's called like Bible Tunes. I forget what it's called. It's a retarded cartoon show about what's it called, the scriptures. And bro, they mar the understanding of the scriptures, bro. Genesis 1, man, they conflated that. It's the weird animation. It has no relation whatsoever to what's been taught from the apostles and others at GreatMillstone on down. But that's because they don't have the truth. Yeah, bro. They don't do the scriptures justice, bro. They done messed it up pretty badly. Isaiah the 64th chapter, verse 4. Okay, wait, what? Oh, the 6th verse 6. Right. But we are all as an unclean thing, and all our righteousness are as filthy rags. And we all do fade as a leaf, and our iniquities like the wind have taken us away. And there is none that calleth upon thy name that stirreth up himself to take hold of thee, for thou hast hid thy face from us, and hast consumed us because of our iniquities. The point I wanted to bring out with that was that our righteousness are as filthy rags, But what's it called? An angel, like, what's it called? Left-hand angel. Actually, first of all, it's better to take it. First of all, it's a better idea to pull out the 45th chapter first, So let me pull out the 45th chapter and I jump back to 64, for better context. Yeah, it was verse 7. Actually, verse 7. I form the light. Actually, verse 5 went on. I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me. I guided thee, though thou hast not known me, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west, that there is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. What's it called? Basically, in layman's terms, in plain terms, he does good and bad. A common Christian mythos, if you will, is that God only does good and Satan only does bad. That's not true. The Lord does both. Right? He controls Satan on the left-hand side. Think of it like a spectrum. The spectrum, far edge, it's good, and the opposite edge, it's bad. And then you got the in between. The Lord's in between. He has a balance. He does both sides. Right? That's in the book of Proverbs, the 16th chapter, verse 11. Proverbs 6:11. Okay. A just weight and balance are of the Lord's. All the ways of the bag of his work, right? So a balance, right? You don't want to be one-sided, you know. The Lord's not one-sided, right? He's like in a playwriting, you know, instance, that of a storytelling, you know, a creative writing, if you will. You know, you got two types of characters, like, you know, a linear character, a one-sided character, and a multi-faced character, right? Multifaceted character. The Lord's multifaceted, right? He's like, you have to realize, man. You have to realize the Lord, he's the power of all things. Just as much as the scriptures make mention how he's the power of knowledge, wisdom, understanding. He's the power of music. He's the power of art. He's the power of clothing. The power of what's it called? Just everything and anything, man. Anything that's in existence was all conceptualized by him. You know, we are his designs, we are his artwork, his art pieces. That's why when I look at my cats, or when I look at an animal in general, like, what's it called? This dog over here, Princess. I always see, you know, a masterpiece in artwork. And I remember when the minute the Lord made the mention how, you know, in our DNA, the Lord's signature's on it, the Lord's name is on it. I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, the Lord's name is on everything, bro. You know, so when you look at a dog, you look, examine the dog. Like, damn, like, you know, fur, you know, sinews, like the anatomical structure, you know, and look, they look beautiful. You praise the Lord, man. You know, you praise the Lord because that's greatness. I wouldn't be able to come up with that, man. The Lord has. And you know, this morning I was just looking at what's it called, deep sea creature videos, and how there are what's it called, apparently new species still being discovered, right? Because obviously Esau hasn't really, you know, what's it called, discovered the whole ocean, and he doesn't want to, you know, do much because he knows Leviathan is there, right? So-called Godzilla, right? But you know, the times he may encounter, you know, a different animal, like a giant octopus, and those things look like freaking aliens, bro. Those look like what's it called? I like some sci-fi movie, bro. Like they look weird, but the Lord's creations, man. You think you'd be able to do that? Hell no, bro. That was on a whole different level, bro. That's why he's the highest, the most high. And the scriptures even emphasize, what's it called? My thoughts are high, bro. So that's Isaiah the 55th chapter, bro. I'm gonna pull that out, bro. Isaiah the 55th chapter, verse 8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Oh my gosh. As the old Apostle Gabar always states, there is a scripture for goddamn everything, bro. Like, You can't argue with that. You can't argue with Isaiah 55 and 8, bro. You can't. You know? I digress. Right, so we know Isaiah 45 and 7 proves that the Lord, you know, does both good and evil. Right? And that's why, what's it called? When you look at areas like works of fiction, like in a show or film, like in, like, I don't know, movies or whatever, and they mention the Old Testament God, they always gotta say, yeah, evil as the Old Testament God. And even with the Gnosticism, goddamn throat. Even with Gnostics, which, you know, it's wicked, but Gnostics, what's it called? Have even referred to, you know, the Lord, you know, the Old Testament God, as a type of demon. You know, he's just crazy and rampant. Well, the Lord's not crazy and rampant, you know, and he's not, what's it called? Just the lesser God. I know he's the most high. You know, that's why that Gnosticism bull crap. You know, it's bull crap. You know, screw Gnosticism. You know, screw that crap. You know, so-called hidden universal knowledge. We ain't gonna find it because the Lord is the only one that gives knowledge. The Lord is the power of knowledge. Right? You have to ask. You know, what's it called? But you know, you see how, what's it called? All these, you know, different areas, and they always refer to the Lord, you know, as an Old Testament God, as ruthless power. Because when you pair him up with the, what's it called, with the so-called New Testament God, You know, New Testament God, you know, is all about peace and love, and Old Testament God is about what's it called, war. You know, what's it called? Scriptures even make the mention how the Lord is a man of war, right? But it's all the same power. But then again, that goes to show you how if he could be loving and peaceful, what's it called, gracious, right? What's it called? He could also be, you know, terror. Again, a balance, as we just brought out. Right, so he has angels that do his, you know, bidding, and that reminds me of a precept. I'm gonna pull out them evil angels, bro. Evil angels are actually spoken though, right? In the scriptures. What? Look what shovel with me. Oh, that explains a lot. Okay, that's my fault. Evil angel occurs in 4 verses. Not the right one. Not the right one. Evil angels, you know, occur in 1 verse in the KJV, and that's Psalm 78:49. And it doth read, he cast upon them the fierceness of his anger, wrath, and indignation. What do the scriptures always emphasize with the Lord? Indignation, man. And trouble by sending evil angels among them. Well, you know, you look at Gabriel, you know, those are right-hand angels. You know, they're here, what's it called, to do a positive work. You know, whereas the evil angels on the other hand, you know, they are here, what's it called, to do something terrible. What's an example of an evil angel? The lying spirit in 2 Kings, I believe it was. You know, when, you know, the Lord did hold that council and said, who shall go before us, you know, to deceive, you know, Ahab into going to war at Ramoth Gilead. And he had a lying spirit say, I shall go up and I shall deceive his prophets. And what the prophets even they're talking about, yeah, you're gonna win the war, dude. You're gonna get the victory. Strength coming from heaven. You're gonna get that victory. You're gonna get that dub. You know, Ramoth Gilead. But then you have that one prophet, which, you know, said, you know, you're gonna lose that crap, dude. And he did lose that crap. You know, he died in Ramoth Gilead. That's an example of a lying angel because they brought about a terrible work. Another precept to this is it's in Ecclesiasticus. Right. Presumably it was the 39th chapter, verse 28 or so. Yes, 28. There be spirits that are created for vengeance. And what do the scriptures always emphasize? Vengeance is of the who? The Lord. You cannot make this up. You cannot, what's it called, say, oh, you're going off. Mofo, I'm bringing out the goddamn precepts, man. You know, use your intuition, you know, realize this thing is actually true. Hey, the scriptures read, for the things written therein are faithful and true. Therefore, it's no lie, it's no goddamn fad. The only fad here is Buddhism. You know, they talking about a way, ain't no goddamn way with the Lord's way, bro. Simple. What was it called? Which in their fury lay on sword strokes in the time of destruction, they pour out their force and appease the wrath of him that made them. Who's him that made them? Yahweh. Whose wrath? His wrath, man, mofo. Like, obvious freaking lead, this wrath, mofo. Talking about, it's not, what's it called, you know, talking about Satan or something. He ain't talking about no goddamn Satan. That's all I wouldn't say goddamn Salakia because that's a righteous man. And he's more righteous than I. So I'm going to bring out Isaiah 54 to prove that point again. He's more righteous than me. Right, what's it called? Teeth of wild beasts and scorpions and serpents, and the sword punishing the wicked to destruction, because it is judgment. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. Thus saith the scriptures, thus saith the Lord, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, HaRachakudash, man. they shall rejoice in his commandment, and they shall be ready upon earth when need is. And when their time has come, they shall not transgress his word. They shall not, they're righteous, they're sinless, they're perfected. Right? Therefore, from the beginning, I was resolved and that upon these things and left in writing. All the works of the Lord are good. Yeah, good, what's it called? Good in the sense that, the Lord is pleased with it. Everything he conceptualized is good. You look back at Genesis 1, you have the line talk about it is good. They created this thing. It is good. Yeah, it's nice. And that's how the Lord sees things too. It is good. What's it called? The most weirdest looking creature on the planet Earth. It is good in the sight of the Lord. Perfect in that sense. Perfect in that. And what's it called? A symmetrical face. Perfect cells that regenerate all the time and don't get worn out. Perfection in the sense that what's it called? That's the way the Lord intended it. There's two definitions of perfection. Perfection in the spiritual body, which is gonna be like all what's it called? Godly stature, and then you have perfection in the sense that that's the way the Lord intended it. Creating me, I'm perfected. What's it called? I look ugly, and I'll be perfected to look beautiful and handsome. What's it called in the spiritual body? But currently in this physique, in this tabernacle, this habitation, this body, this flesh, I am perfected because I am the way the Lord intended me to be. Right, my genotype, my phenotype. Right, what's it called? The genetics. That's the way the Lord constructed me. Again, I'm an artwork. I'm an art piece. We're all art pieces. Right, what's it called? Going back to the Lord, being an artist. Hey, he cooks, man. You got the modern day slang. Talking about, hey, I'm straight cooking, and you cook. The Lord cooked, man. The Lord cooked when he made me. I'm perfected to him. Sure, I got the rosacea, but that's the way the Lord intended it. Right, what's it called? Sure, I got thin hair follicles. That's the way the Lord intended it. Sure, I got moles. That's the way the Lord intended it. What's it called? Or not. This ain't a mole. This is I think it's freckles. Most freckles you see is like little dots on the face, but the black spots all over the face are also considered freckles. Becas, right? So I'm the way the Lord intended me to be. I am perfected in that sense. But true perfection will come in those spiritual bodies, obviously, first and foremost. I digress, though. Yeah, so going back to left hand and right hand angels, left hand angels that bring about wickedness. Yeah, they're out here, what's it called, bringing about wickedness. But does that mean that they're wicked? Hell no. They're righteous, more righteous than me. Right? So what's it called? Because they do the Lord's will. You don't see those angels talking about, Lord, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think we should, fuck up Job. I don't think we should. No. They're out here. What's it called? They Satan did mess up Job, man. Really trying his faith to see before the Lord. And I remember one of the Akim actually made that mention with Yahushua when he was in the wilderness. How was it called? He was tempted. And then, after he overcame the temptation, angels minister unto him because they're trying to deceive you for the Lord. Think on that. So, really, the Lord tells him, hey, go fuck that guy up. The angels are like, I bet, and they do that. To appease the wrath of him that made them. That's their purpose. Bring about a freaking work, bro. Angel meaning messenger, messenger, physical action or verbal action, I digress. Back to the 64th chapter, verse 6. But we are all as an unclean thing, and all our righteousness are as filthy rags. So, no matter how hard I try to do good, we all fall short of the glory as the scriptures mention, right? And also going back to James, I believe it was, or was it First Peter? I forget. One or the other. It makes the mention how, we break one law, we are guilty of breaking them all. So there's that. And also, angels perfected, what's it called in the true sense. I'm not perfected. Yeah, I'm still in this goddamn flesh, man. I got all these scars, man. Look at that. Look at that. You think that's funny? You think that's funny? You think that's funny? What's it called? All those bum shit. You think that's funny? Hell no, bro. Hell no. But, just some simple scriptures that prove, what's it called? Satan's righteous, man. He's more righteous than I am. He's more righteous than all of us combined. Why? Because we're not on the same level as Yahweh Shai, being sinless in the flesh. No, for us, we have to actually wait to get transformed into that body to actually be sinless. Yahweh Shai was the only individual in existence to be righteous in this flesh, man. He wasn't over righteous. He didn't become over righteous because what's he called? He was sinless in this flesh. No, that was his purpose. His whole what's it called? Ordeal. His whole mission. His whole goal was to be what's it called? Righteous, sinless, as to be unspotted, a sheep without blemish, to be sacrificed for our sake. That is the ordinance. And Yahweh, man, he was vexed, right? I can't even imagine myself being in those shoes. Every single day being tempted, you sin not once while being in a sinful body. So Yahweh Shai is him, man. What's it called? He's literally the GOAT. He's the GOAT and greatest of all time. Yeah, he is, man. What's it called? King of Kings, Lord of Lords. I'm not making that. You can't make that up, man. When the scriptures make the mention of joint heirs with Hamashiach, it means that we're lesser kings. A lesser king is an actual thing. You got a lesser king, you got a higher king. What's it called? Think of Hosea. What's it called? He was a lesser king. And I believe it was, what's it called? The Assyrian king, right? Shalmaneser. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I'll keep my peace on that one. Take it with a grain of salt. That's from that. But Yahweh Shai is the King of Kings. If he is the King of Kings, that's because we're lesser kings, and he's our, he's over us. He's the king over us, bro. So that's the doctrine. That's the truth, right? But now I'm gonna pull out the book of Amos, the 3rd chapter, verse 6. Why not, bro? This also proves what's it called. The Lord be doing evil things, bro. Evil things. Every time the Lord doesn't do bad. He does good. Well, the Lord also doesn't do good. He also does bad. That's how he ordained it. You have to realize this is his movie. He's like a director. See, the thing is with screenwriters and playwrights, they do some pretty messed up stuff as to keep the audience entertained, to keep the story flowing and just dramatic. Right? They kill off your favorite character in the most gruesome of ways. Like an example be the freaking Walking Dead, bro. You know what? Not Fear the Walking Dead, The Walking Dead. And I think it was like season 7 or so when you had what's it called, that Negan killed Glenn. People still cool about that. They're like, oh my god, that was my homeboy. He went out a pretty bad way. He went out a pretty gruesome way. He got his head bashed in the freaking mush. It was literally mush. And you see his finger switch. That's how grievous it was, bro. That's how the Lord. That's how the Lord is. He's the director, right? He's the producer. He's the exec. He is the screenwriter, the playwright. He's all those positions, man. So it was no wonder as to why what's it called? He's gonna do bad because it's part of the freaking movie. And I'm the audience as much as I'm an actor. Hey, what did what's it called? Shakespeare say? And I think it was also written in here what Shakespeare said. Going into the world as a stage. I'm gonna pull that out. So, right. Chapter 2, all the world's a stage. World events and problems. Jumping down to the third paragraph of the 2nd chapter reads, in order to help us understand certain historical and current events in the world, let us reflect back on what the great English playwright is somebody that, writes, what's it called, stories. A screenwriter also writes stories, but a screenwriter is like for like Hollywood, like actual films, whereas a playwright is like for like theatrical plays. Like at Broadway. the Shrek play at Broadway. That's written by a playwright. You know, whereas like A24's Civil War, you have screenwriters, you know, doing all that stuff. So lucky. Anyways, let's reflect back on what the great English playwright William Shakespeare, which was also an Israelite, you know, a J, because he had salt, man. The other apostles don't went into that how William Shakespeare is a Jake. Was a Jake. William Shakespeare once stated that all the world's a stage, and the men and women in it are merely players, but we're also the audience. We're seeing as, you know, the story unfolds. We're witnessing the story unfold. Our very selves, you know. It's not us, you know, rehearsing, you know, scenes beforehand. We already know the context, you know, the Lord behind the scene, and you know, we're not repeating it over and over again. No, we're playing it out the way we play it out. You know, without rehearsal. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen in 5 minutes from now on. Only the Lord knows. That's why it's Lord willing. You know, like James Smith mentioned how, you know, it's Lord, you say Lord willing. So I don't know what's gonna happen in 5 minutes, but whatever I do in 5 minutes was already ordained beforehand. The Lord, you know, already, you know, conceptualized it. He already thought about it. So the ways are men of the Lord. How then can man understand his own way? You see that? I didn't know I was gonna be, you know, digressing, jumping back and forth. I just had an idea. I'm gonna do a lesson. I didn't know I was gonna be jumping around here. That was a Lord. But see, I'm witnessing it unfold before my very own eyes, but I'm also the one acting it out. Therefore, I have no autonomy. It's a loss of agency. I have no agency. I am simply a mere puppet, being puppeteered by Yahweh Bash and Yahweh Shai to bring about a work. And that is the truth. How great is that? And you call it philosophical. Well, I remember I was speculating once upon a time. This is, you know, a righteous form of philosophy, you know, righteous philosophers. And because philosophy is simply, you know, living by a code, living by a way. Philosophy, you know, in the Greek means love for wisdom. Well, what can I mean by love for wisdom? Well, living by a certain, you know, a wise structure. What is a wise structure? This book, wisdom is found therein. The scriptures make the mention how, you know, it provides counsel. Where to seek counsel. The other apostle Gabar made the mention how a righteous king had counselors and he actually listened to them. Because you have what's it called? Those wicked kings, they have counselors out here, the prophets, you know, telling them, you know, what they're doing. They out here ignoring them, like, I don't want to hear this crap. But a real righteous king, a righteous man, the Lord, doth hearken to counsel. He does listen. We take counsel from this as well. How, you know, this is like the foundation. Really, the foundation and the sources get how about Shemel Shai, but you know, a lot of the teachings, the things that are written aforetime, written for our learning. A lot of them are comprised in this book. Right, therefore we hearken to it. The men of the Lord, they filter their speech using this. Right. As for the full wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that will come in the kingdom, you know, pursuant to those dreams the men of the Lord have had, you know, where the other apostles of the heart be like, bring me the bag of clothes and so on and so forth, which represent wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. The thing is, he can't attain it until the kingdom. Yahweh Shai has it, you know, but he's in the spirit realm as a, you know, in the spiritual form. Not for us, not yet. We have to wait. Then we shall have the 7 eyes and the 7 horns, right? It's having completion, full wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. That's right now. We have what we have. You know, it's like it's limited, but we'll achieve the full thing. You know, the whole 9, right? The expansion pack and the kingdom. And that's for another topic. However, what was I supposed to pull out? I don't even remember. I don't even remember what the priest was supposed to get out was. Right, what's it called? Amos, the 3rd chapter, verse 6. Shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid? Shall there be evil in the city, and the Lord have not done it? Surely the Lord Yahweh would do nothing, but he revealeth his secrets unto his servant the prophets. Right, what's all that jumps into how the Lord, deals with his prophets. And what do his prophets, prophets speak on? Terrible things. Terrible things. You can't make that up. It's the word of the Lord. It is simply the word of the Lord. I'm gonna end it off in one precept. Okay. Bear with me. All right, Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 1. The word of the Lord which came unto Zephaniah, the son of Cushai, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Hezekiah, in the days of Josiah, the king of Ammon, king of Judah. I will utterly consume all things from off the land, saith the Lord. That's a terrible, thing to say. Teach prophecy for the ICBMs. But that's for another topic. I just want to do a quick lesson on, is Satan evil, and the answer is hell not. He's a righteous man. He's more righteous than we. With that being said, I hope the system was edifying. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Rachakudash, the born honor speaks to the apostles. And of this GreatMillstone, who do well and have taught. This is 100% truth. Much peace and blessings be unto you, hopeful. Let that question out this word of thought, truth and sincerity. To all you Akim, I do say shalom.